Hello and welcome back to the Cortright cast. Today we're jumping into the past to talk about a renowned movie through the entirety of film culture, film history, and so on and so forth. And that movie is The Shining. We are jumping into the past to take a look at something a little bit older because the thing we have here is Jonathan's a pretty big fan of The Shining, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a confession to make. I am a heathen and did not watch this movie until last night. I tried to watch it a few years back, late at night, fell asleep, like 10 minutes in, never really revisited it. Always a movie that I assumed I would respect. I've seen some other Stanley Kubrick films, not every single one of them. I would say you've seen all of his films, correct? Or most of them?
All of them except for Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah, and that's funny enough, that's one of the ones that I've seen. And I really enjoy Eyes Wide Shut. I enjoy his work. I really respect him as a director. But I would say I'm not like a massive fan of all of his work. They're not my favorite movies. So I have some reactions to The Shining that I am not sure would be quite so... I just have one question. Is The Shining a little bit overrated?
No.
You don't think so at all?
No.
So can you give me your broad opinion on The Shining? Like, I think it was like just fantastic, great, best movie of all time, legendary. Like what's your general perception of the film?
It's my favorite horror movie. I'm not a massive horror movie fan, but it's my favorite one. It's one of my favorite films ever. Would easily go in a top 10. It is a film. It seems almost functions like a Rorschach test, where every person that sees it sees something completely different in it. And when they explain their opinion of it, you're kind of like, oh, you're right. And then you watch it and you have a completely different view of it that seems to actually be backed up by things in the movie. It's kind of a, like, you get what you see out of it. In that way, it's infinitely rewatchable. It's never the same when you rewatch it. Similar to the way that, like, people have even gone really in depth with this and like mapped out the Overlook Hotel, and the layout of it makes no sense. And knowing Stanley Kubrick, such a precise director and such a particular director, some of the things that could be viewed as mistakes for him are very clearly not mistakes. Mm-hmm. They're very clearly on purpose. Which it sort of feels like you're watching a mystery box of a not a J.J. Abrams mystery box, but a mystery
something with actually
of
something in it.
Yeah, something where like you're like trying to decode it while you're watching it. Like, I don't think that The Shining, in terms of like the plot and the characters, is particularly interesting. It's a very standard Stephen King story, but it's not told like a Stephen King story at all. It's clear that like Kubrick used King's premise as a catalyst to do what he wanted to do with the genre. It's sort of anti-horror movie in a way where most horror movies are set in creepy locations. Visually, they're meant to look creepy. They're meant to, you sort of look at it and go like, that's a horror movie. If you look at like the hotel, and especially the early, like there's plenty of long tracking shots at the beginning of the movie when they're walking through the hotel. It's sort of bright and it looks inviting. And that's sort of an anti-horror movie decision, especially in 1980. And he also never plays with the tension of like, will these things go down? Will he try to kill his family? You kind of know from scene one that that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Like, he doesn't try to hide that at all. You're watching them sort of slowly go crazy.
Yeah. And
you know that you're trapped there. Like, even like from the beginning, like all the shots are really far out. Mm-hmm. Like when they're first at the hotel, it's like you feel like a passive observer who like can't do anything about it. You're like, this is going to happen, and I got to sit here and watch it. And even the way like the dates slowly like get more specific as the title cards slowly get more specific. It's like this slow build up to like, you know what's coming, and all along you kind of have to just watch and slowly like notice little like clues to the film's meaning and stuff like that. So those are a few reasons why I think it's an incredibly fascinating movie.
I think it's a really hard place for me to be as well, as someone coming into the film later, because I've heard such like legend about the movie. You know, I've heard about the hours and hours of theories and crazy things that people read and see, and how particular Stanley Kubrick was about every single
And
scene.
the movie was hated on release, or largely disliked on release. And Stanley Kubrick was nominated for a Golden Razzie for Worst Director.
Wow.
This was a movie that was not a success at the time, or not a critical success at the time.
It's crazy that it's become such a legendary film. And, you know, I guess I can just come out and say I liked the film. I was hooked early on by the film. However, by the end of it, I did not feel... It was one of those things where the expectation that was built up in my mind from the way that other people perceive the movie may have like tainted a little bit of my perception, because in the end I was kind of like, oh, that was pretty good. I enjoyed it for the most part, and I had some problems with it. But I never once felt like it was like a legendary film. Now, if I go back in time and try and look at it from the point of view of, you know, it being the 80s and what has and hasn't been done, I can definitely give it even more slack. But yeah, I definitely was not just blown away. But I think that one of the things that's more interesting about the perception of the film is the way that so much history has kind of wrapped itself around the film, and the way that people study it. Like you said, almost more, that's more interesting than the actual plot of the film. Because the plot isn't anything special. I did enjoy it. I liked the decision to make it so harrowing for no reason. Like the way the music is always so loud, always so creepy, all the time when nothing happens. You know, I liked that taste. I could definitely see it, you know, back in the 80s and the way that came across and how different that probably was. I mean, I was really hooked. I watched it in 2 sittings because I can't stay awake through a film. And, you know, rarely do I come back to a film and think, oh, I'm ready to finish that. You know, but I genuinely was like, I want to keep finishing this. I just can't stay awake. Or, you know, I think I had to work. But so when I watched it, though, one of my main complaints, and I really want to know what you think or what other people think about this, is Jack Nicholson's performance is way too much.
Oh, it's absolutely insane.
It's insane, but not in the way that, like, I feel like I've seen a lot of people say it's like super great, like award-winning, like performance of like insanity and all these things. And I think he overacted 60% of the film to the point where it was hard. It was breaking my immersion in the film. How far off base would you say that I am?
I mean, I disagree entirely. I don't disagree that he overacted. I disagree that it was a problem. I think
that was something I struggled with.
I think it was the most, like, one of the most insane performances. And interestingly, the way that the movie was shot was Stanley Kubrick's like famous for doing numerous takes. The movie has set a record for the most takes on the stairwell scene, which like hits him in the head. Like, I think they did like almost like 100 or some takes of that. But they would do so many takes, and what would happen is like Jack Nicholson would start at like a very normal performance, and then he'd be like, all right, get crazier. Like, there's different takes where he's like at totally different levels. And a lot of what they went with was him at 11. And there's a lot about what happens in the movie, like whether it actually happened or what in the movie took place in his head and what actually happened. Like little things, like in the scene where his wife interrupts him while he's working and he like screams at her. The typewriter is a certain color when the scene starts, and then when he starts yelling at her, the typewriter changes color, and then when he goes back to normal, the typewriter changes back. There's
so that could
little
be like
clues
like
that,
signifying of him going crazy and imagining,
yes,
you know, taking it out on his family. The entire
like bar scene with the bartender. Yeah. There's a deliberate cartoonishness and insanity to it. I think it's one of the most iconic performances ever. No other actor could ever do that.
I think it is iconic, but I found myself being broken from the immersion of the film multiple times by his performance. Especially through... I understand that it's supposed to be like explosive, but there's a lot of points where he's just so irrational that it's hard to, I mean, you can be like, well, he's going crazy, but he's like being such a jerk. But he's like here, and then all of a sudden he's at 13 out of nowhere and for no reason. And you can be like, well, oh, this guy's going crazy. For me, I thought it was too much on a regular basis.
I guess like I don't view the movie as a movie about a guy going crazy. Like I don't think about it in that way, and I don't view his, like I don't buy his character if we're talking about like a normal movie level. Like, he's not a believable character.
Yeah.
He's insane. And he's not just insane, like he's sort of meant to be taken over by the spirit of the hotel.
Yeah.
Essentially. So I don't view this as like, oh, he's slowly going insane over the course of the movie, and this is supposed to be a realistic portrayal of a guy going crazy. It's not. Like, his character's kind of cartoonish from the start in a more toned down way, and he just gets crazier and crazier as it goes on. And even the way
I loved his performance early on in the movie. Like, I thought he was killing it in the intros and up into about halfway. And then obviously the points where he does go full crazy, I thought he did well in those. It was the places in the middle where it was times when he didn't need to be that crazy, and he was like doing crazy things with his mouth and his eyes.
Yeah, well, just his facial expressions, like especially I love the scene. I just love the way it's shot when he's in the bathroom.
The bathroom was the one where
he's just like,
I was like, what is he doing?
I love that bit. It just gets so weird.
Yeah.
But to me, the movie functions like a dream, and I feel like it's meant to be viewed that way, where it's not meant to be taken literally. Like there's a really like great shot where he's looking down at this like labyrinth, and there's a maze out, and he like fades into the labyrinth, and then it shows the actual overview of the labyrinth outside where his kid and wife are walking. Mm-hmm. Like he's a minotaur, essentially, would be the visual cue there, and it's stuff like that makes the movie so brilliant to me. It's the visual storytelling in that,
and that's what I really want to learn even more about. As you know, even going on past this, is I felt like maybe after watching the film, I felt like maybe I needed more things explained to me, or I needed to go through with a fine-tooth comb myself and really look. Because obviously on your first viewing, you're not going to catch every little thing. You know, I felt like I picked up on a lot of it. I felt like I understood the film. Yeah. But there is a point where I'm like, I think I would appreciate it more if I knew the details. I feel like knowing the details makes you like it more. In the same way that someone who read the book would appreciate a movie adaptation more, you know, or the little things. You know, if you just don't know what you're looking for, like just on its face value, I really enjoyed the film. I did think it was a little bit anticlimactic. I did not love the ending. In general, and I thought that he overacted to a point of breaking the immersion in the film. Past that, it was a really enjoyable film for me.
I think I love the ending, specifically the ending shot. I think it's one of the most chilling shots.
Yeah, the picture. Yes.
And that is the end of the movie. Like he's frozen outside, and he's basically now he is in this image from 1950, or I think it's 1950 or something. Like he's forever stuck in the hotel. Like he's forever stuck there. And a lot of the like theories or
what do you think
sort
about
of views of it is
like
that
a
like
reincarnation of the character? And that was always him.
No, I think the hotel essentially represents a cycle of abuse and violence. You see a lot of like Native American art in the background of the hotel. There's talk about it, but yeah. He is perpetuating a cycle of abuse and violence against his family. You can view his family escaping as like almost them breaking the abuse or breaking the cycle. But like him as a character is forever stuck in that. And him being forever stuck in that picture at the end is the representation of that. And that like I love that ending shot where it just slowly.
I like that, and I really liked the shot, regardless of the implications. I did like the theory though, which I thought held a decent amount of weight, that he was a reincarnation of the killer every time, and that they all, because the way that they do the Grady, like the butler that he talks to in the bathroom, and the way he's not the same Grady.
Yeah, his name's different.
His name's different, and and there was implication that he was like first, and there's the other guy, and then he tells Jack Nicholson that you've always been the caretaker and stuff like that. I thought there were some good cues, like, you know, when it comes to deep theories, you know, about like what really happened or what the real implication was. You can often jump off a cliff, you know, and go too far. But I felt like that was one of the few where it actually, like, everything seemed to kind of line up for that. And I think you could take it either way. I thought that was the implication in the end. Anyway, I don't think it really changes the way that the film comes off in the end, regardless of which one you believe. That being said, I do want to get into a little bit of, you know, like I said, there's not a ton to say about the plot and the characters and, you know, the basic elements of the movie. I think what's more interesting is Kubrick himself, and as well as the lore and theories surrounding the film. Yeah. You know, everyone's been over the film for more than long enough for us to just review it. So as you being my Wikipedia to Stanley Kubrick and The Shining, I have a few questions. So I'll start with the one that I just want to understand the most. What in the world is the bear scene? The you know what I'm talking about? The bear and the dude in the hotel. The words we're not going to say because of YouTube monetization.
So
okay, so there's actually on that.
You did? Because
I watched a little bit.
There's some theories about sort of the abuse of children in the film. That when you first see Danny,
the bear,
he has a bear over his, you know.
Yeah. Well, there's some weird details about Danny.
There's a bit where he's like, when they go into that room that you're not supposed to go into, you know, with the creepy lady and everything, and when he when Jack talks to his wife about it, he's like, he tries to convince her that he's lying in a similar way that like abusive parents do.
Well, I've seen implications that he actually did that to Danny, or like hurt him when in that room, saying that he really did, and then he woke up from the dream, and that was why he lied, because he went in and lied. He went in, cheated on his wife theoretically, and then lied about it coming back, which didn't make a lot of sense.
And also the bear thing specifically, I think was lifted from the book, but it had a different context in the book. But it was about
I think it was a dog or something in the book.
Yeah. So that bit is like, I'm still a little like iffy on what exactly that was.
I watched some deep theories about saying that.
But I thought
the father was abusing the child sexually.
Yeah.
And
I thought that one seemed to hold a lot of weight.
It held weight. I don't know if I totally went with it, but it did. It probably had more weight than any of the other ones that I saw. Just with the way that it comes up in the movie between, I mean, things like the sweaters that he's wearing and how he changes sweaters.
Yeah.
After the scene is a strange one. The bear, the eyes on the bear being like sewn differently. Like there were a lot of details that I found believable.
Yeah.
I thought that was one of the most interesting theories in regards to actually having substance around it too. Because the next thing I want to ask you is, did Stanley Kubrick fake the moon landing?
Yeah, obviously.
Obviously.
No, but that is weird when the kid has the Apollo 11 sweater on, right before he goes into a room, and then they have to lie about it. You know, it is a little weird. In the documentary, I think it's Room 301. I think that's room.
It's 237. Is the actual
237.
one.
I don't know why.
301.
Whatever. Room numbers.
Yeah.
This guy goes at length about how he thinks that the movie is Stanley Kubrick's confession to faking the moon landing, like the scene where he's like, don't you understand? I have responsibilities to my employers, and like he's like screaming at his wife. He's like, this is Stanley Kubrick talking about the moon landing. And then I was like, this dude's insane. And then he was just like, and then there's that scene where Danny's wearing the Apollo 11 sweatshirt, and I was like, wait, that is a weird detail.
Because he switches sweaters. He's wearing a different one.
It is weird. There's so many. I'm telling you, this movie is a Rorschach test. Like, whatever you want to see in it, you'll see in it. And that's, like, crazy. It's crazy that a movie can do that and still be pretty coherent. Yeah, so yeah, I think he did. Yeah, for sure.
So definitely, just an official stance.
100%.
Definitely faked the moon landing.
Proven.
And The Shining is his confession.
Yeah.
So regarding Kubrick and his actual, you would know more about this than me, Did he speak on the film at all? I know he was not one for like explaining his films, but in regards to, what's been, I guess, what was documented of the production of the film, I know there's a lot surrounding the production of the film.
So
what did he have to say about the film?
Kubrick went pretty dark after this movie, like in terms of doing public interviews. Like he never liked to do them in general, but he got like a bad reputation after, or a bad like public reputation after Clockwork Orange, just for the content of the movie. And I know that he got a bad reputation for this, for the way that he treated Shelley Duvall. And there's a lot of like videos of him like being a jerk to her, trying to get her to, give the performance that she gave in the movie.
I don't know where anyone else stands on this, but I thought that her performance was the best out of all in the movie.
Yeah,
I don't know if anyone would like think that Nicholson was a better one, but I found her like pretty much impeccable. Whereas where I frequently found myself going like, it's too much. Like I wasn't totally always buying him, but I always bought her.
Yeah, and that's because she was basically like,
it was real.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so he kind of just didn't want to do like public appearances after this. I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard an interview of him talking about it. But he would never explain his movies past a basic plot level.
Yeah.
So,
which I like, which is something that I noticed that I thought was really important, and I have a lot to say about when we talk about Dr. Sleep, is that there is a very stark contrast between older films in general and newer films, but specifically Dr. Sleep and The Shining, in that The Shining has so much to it, but it is not shoved in your face. It is not explained to you through exposition, through characters saying random things to themselves just for the sake of the audience. That is not something you see a lot anymore these days. And I think it really, really, really hurts Dr. Sleep because they do it a lot. But I don't want to get too deep into Dr. Sleep because this is going to be a 2-part podcast. This has been part 1 where we talk about The Shining, but I wanted to break it into 2 parts because I felt like there was enough within each movie to really get a little bit more in detail like we have here. So if you enjoyed this podcast, stick around next week for part 2, where we're going to talk about Dr. Sleep and kind of compare the two and contrast and talk about the conversation between the two films. Not really review Dr. Sleep, though we will talk about some of the qualities and problems of the movie, because I think we have some conflicting opinions about that too. So stick around for that if you enjoyed this one. Otherwise, leave a like and a subscribe on the YouTube channel, and we will talk to you guys in part 2.